It is an honor to have you with us this afternoon. Thank you for chiming in. My name is Derek, and I will be your host today for this webinar. We will be looking at Blanchard Company's report, HR L&D Trends Report. And I would love to just share my screen and get us ready for this as we embark on this journey, as we look at the results from this report. Now, Ken Blanchard Companies, we function in multiple countries all around the world, and they started this research done in end of 2019. And so today I am reporting back the findings from this year's report. So it's important to note that Dr. Jay Campbell and David Witt are the ones who conducted this training. And David DeWitt, he is Blanchard's program director, HR and L&D Trends. He's the one that created this in 2019, and he has been conducting this every year since. Dr. Jay Campbell is our Chief Product Officer for Blanchard Global, and he also is really involved with the research. So today I'm presenting the findings, and I have not done this research. I am presenting the findings, but I was there to hear their webinar, and I've contacted them, and I've gone some back and forth to clarify a few things. So my name is Derek, and I am a managing partner with Momenta here in Singapore. And Momenta is the company that has exclusive rights to Blanchard and operates Blanchard Singapore, and I function as the country manager. So welcome to any and all who are coming. And today we'll spend about a good half hour just presenting the results. We'll have some time for Q&A, and we should be out of here in about 45 minutes. So just to manage expectations. Now, this, as I said before, this is a multi-year research initiative. So we started at the end of 2019 with the first year results coming out in 2020. So we've been, Blanchard has been conducting this every year. So what you'll see is not the entirety of the results today. You're going to be seeing some really key insights and special topics that we're going to highlight that has come out of this research. And today, for this year's theme, there's going to be a lot on AI. Of course, it's all on AI. So again, I want to reiterate, I'm not going through all of the results. If you want the report, the full report and the materials, we will give it to you if you stay for the entire thing. So if you stay right to the end, we will give you all of the materials, which will include a more robust reporting of the research, and then there'll be some things on Blanchard Singapore. So this research, this trends report was conducted with over 1,000 respondents from different companies, HR and L&D professionals from over 1,000 companies. They're across a wide range of industries, and 80 different countries were represented. So over the years, they have found that, it started off being a bit more America-centric, and over the years, they've really expanded it to try and have a representation as a global scale. Now, this year is important because there was the largest ever responses from Asia. So there are some great things that we can derive from this report. However, Singapore itself is not statistically hugely represented here, but there are some really key insights, which I will share for us because it does see a difference in terms of the HR and L&D trends in Asia versus the global trends. So I will be going over some of those in today's webinar. So what we're seeing is we're focusing on the changing realities in the workforce. These are about the changing realities. And again, I want to say welcome to all those who have just come. So the workforce, as what we have found in the responses from the research, is that there's a bit of a power shift towards the employee. There is the concept of global employee empowerment. And so what they have said, all these respondents, these 1,000 companies, HR and L&D professionals, said that hiring this year, 2024, will be more challenging than before. Hiring will be more challenging. Why is that? Well, we know from the research and the responses is that right now we are seeing an increased importance on things like flexibility, remote working, things like work-life balance are becoming even more important to employees, more so than maybe advancement opportunities. And just to reflect the growth, last year this number was at 75%. So there was a 12% increase compared to last year, which is quite significant. So hiring, finding the right people, because there is this essence that people are moving around a lot. They are basically finding the situation that best suits them, and maybe not necessarily one that is the most lucrative for them. So we're seeing this shift, especially post-COVID, that people are really finding the right fit in terms of, especially when it comes to working remotely and flexibility. And so we're finding in a global situation that finding the particular talent is going to be more challenging this year in this environment. Hand in hand with that is retention. So even more respondents, 88% said retention will be more challenging as well. Why? For pretty much the same reasons. People are looking for that flexibility, that work-life balance, the work from home, much more than before. Last year, this same number was 79%. So again, there's a significant increase. And the reasons are flexibility, work-life balance, etc. There was something else that came out of the research that the researchers shared, that David Witt especially shared, is that a lot of companies now, they are expected to deliver on their what's called the brand promise of their company. So every company will have this concept of, here's what it's like to work in our company. Here's what our culture is like. And they make promises, whether explicitly or maybe in the interview process or maybe in social media or in publications and marketing for your company. You'll say, working like us is going to be like A, B, and C. What we are seeing now with the workforce is that they expect the company to follow through on those promises. And will they actually effectively be true to their brand promise? And what we're seeing is now the Gen Z type of younger generation, they are expecting that type of honestness, that type of genuineness where they would honor their brand promise. And if they don't honor that brand promise, we are seeing now more than ever, people are leaving for places that will essentially honor what they are saying. So this whole employee kind of empowerment, this flexibility, this feeling that I will go out and find the place that works best for my situation, or that is true to their word. So these are really interesting findings that we have found, that this research has found. And so it's a big question of whether whether our companies has the actual culture that we say we have, especially if we are making these big kind of claims in either marketing or the interview process, and then does the actual employee experience equate that? Now, what's interesting that the research also brought up is that these same HR and L&D professionals that responded, these 1,000 different companies, they said that their actual employee engagement and their employee experience is positive. It's average or above average. So even though hiring is going to be different, even though difficult, even though retention is going to be difficult, the HR and L&D people said, no, our employee engagement, our employee experience is pretty good. Now, it was interesting that even the researchers themselves said, maybe it's, they don't even think, they don't agree with this, because they think maybe the HR and L&D professionals take a look at their company and say, no, the employee experience is pretty good. And so, for those of you who are in HR and L&D in your organizations, would you say that your employee experience is average or above average? We don't know. But there was an interesting anecdote here, is that in Japan, the results were 28% below this. So they said that only 59% of respondents said that their employee experience was average or above average. And the researchers said that might be more realistic to where it is. But there was a kind of note here on whether L&D and HR professionals really have a true enough gauge on their employee experience. We'll never know. But hopefully your employee engagement or employee experience is positive, average or above average. So for those of you who are on this call, I'd love to just get a gauge since Singapore is not statistically represented here specifically. I'd love to encourage you just to take a look at this. Let me go back. Sorry. This is going to be just a simple Mentimeter, and we're going to just take a poll on which factors do your employees care most about. So you are, as some of you are HR and L&D professionals here. Just for everyone on the call, just go ahead and I'm grabbing it too, if you can see my phone. Just go ahead and rank these according to what your understanding of importance is for your organization that you represent. And if you're currently not employed in an organization, maybe you can just write about it personally. So if you go ahead and click, you can click multiple ones and you can rank them in terms of what do you think your employees care most about. And as we do that, I'm going to ask that you do that, and I'm going to pull up the results just so it's interesting to see for us on this call what the results are. So let's go ahead and keep doing that. I can see some responses here. Awesome. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to wait just one more minute. So if you can just do that, and then I'll get the responses here. Thank you for those who are responding. I just wait for maybe a couple more. So if you go ahead and scan the QR code, I can just get a few more responses, and that would be great. And I would just want to share this with you quickly, and then I'll just share the results. So what you're seeing here, at least from us on the call here, you're seeing work-life balance. So again, this is kind of representative of what the research has shown. And career growth opportunities. Really interesting. Now, I would say in generations past, job security would have been more important. Now we're seeing, at least for us on the call here, work-life balance is so important. Now, this was not as big of a deal, and it has actually, since COVID, has really become one of the top things. And I love seeing that at least for this call, we are representative here. So career growth opportunities, effective leaders actually globally, and what we're seeing is actually lower than ever before. So interesting. All right, so I'm going to stop here. I'm going to go back to the results. Thank you for those of you who had a chance to respond. One thing that was very statistically significant in this research is that management aspirations are on the decline. So this is the first time since the inception of this research initiative that over half of the respondents said that people are not wanting to become managers. So what does that mean? It means that people are looking at their current career path in the organization, and they're saying, wow, I see what manager life is all about, the increased meetings, the increased responsibilities, and even though there's a package change and there's remuneration, I choose either because of work-life balance or I just, for mental health or whatever reason, people are not wanting to be managers as much as before. Fascinating. But when we look at kind of how the importance of weight of people have now when it comes to them making decisions for work-life balance, you can see that, yeah, it makes sense. Even if you pay me more, I don't want to take on those responsibilities. So this came out in the research. What we find in some certain industries like tech, like engineering, that kind of thing, you're seeing the rise of the super producer, right? So there are certain industries that are developing career paths for people to not be people leaders, right? So we're seeing that in kind of more of the newer kind of industries, more historical industries, they're not seeing that change as such. But there are definitely some, increasingly so, that there is a career path for people who do not want to be people leaders, who do not want to manage people, but they're just encouraged to produce. And we're seeing that a lot in the tech world. But for the first time since this inception of this research, we are seeing less people want to become managers. So I thought that was really interesting. However, in Asia, it's very interesting. It's even more. So in China, there is 63% of organizations said management aspirations are on decline. And in Japan, 72%. So we're seeing in certain places in Asia that there is a less desire for people to take on management. So yeah, so these are very interesting findings where people are just taking a look at their life, taking a look at the current organization and saying, I don't want that. So for people, and you are all, the majority here will be HR and L&D, how do we plan for that moving forward? What is our corporate culture in a sense of, do they have to have management in order to succeed here? So these are really interesting questions and results from the research that really came up. So let's shift focus to specifically within HR issues. So this is things that, again, for those of you who came late, this is research done. This is a multi-year engagement. So we do this every year across 1,000 different companies and 80 different countries. And so this is what HR and L&D professionals, they responded to saying, this is what we are focusing on in the year 2024. So this is not a theoretical thing. This is like where the budgets and where the planning and engagements and trainings are focused on for 2024. So of the 1,000 companies that have responded, the top ones are developing leadership bench strength. So leadership bench strength is basically developing your high potentials, right? It's on the bench. They're not yet at the highest performers, but they are the ones that are deemed as high potentials. So that's their for all the respondents, this is the top focus of their training initiatives for 2024. Let's develop our high potentials. And then let's do initiatives that retain our high performers. So there's this essence of let's get our potentials into being top performers. And then how are we going to keep our high performers? Now, high performer retention doesn't always have to be training. Right, it could be different initiatives to keep them, but it's this interesting concept of we have the potentials and the high performers. And then when it comes to the skill sets development, it's interesting that the third one is attracting other workers. So there's a sense of we're not necessarily going to develop, we're going to develop our high potentials, but when it comes to specific skills, maybe we'll get skills elsewhere. So this is really interesting to see what the focus of all of these companies around the world are going to be focusing on for the next year. What was fascinating to the researchers, who are both American, by the way, they were very surprised to see that when it comes to diversity and inclusion, they came out as the bottom in the bottom three. So with this, they were really like surprised because in America, this is a huge thing. And this might be front and center for a lot of companies. And it might be something that's really discussed and really targeted and really focused on in terms of training and engagements. But for the rest of the world, not so much. And they are not doing so many diversity or inclusion initiatives in terms of actual programming. Fascinating stuff. However, it must be shared that when it comes to diversity and inclusion, 67% of all the respondents said it's still increasing in importance. So what does this mean? It means that diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are still important. It's still growing in importance, but in terms of programming, in terms of trainings, in terms of initiatives, globally, it seems like there isn't as much. Just a very interesting side note from the research. Now, this was what we asked the same L&D and HR professionals. What do you want, the kind of capacities or competencies that you want for your leaders in 2024? So they were given 15 options. These are the ones, and these options were developed over the years that we have done this research and just collecting them into really big, different competencies. Now, this is the results. These are the top 6, and I'll share with you why this is, why they brought out these 6. Now, when it comes to the top one that was selected by all the 1,000 respondents, engaging and developing talent. This is what they expect leaders to be able to do. How do we engage? How do we develop? How do we attract and retain really good talent? So this is what the HR and L&D professionals want their leaders to do. Now, the second one is leading and supporting change. And we're seeing this change, ability to lead change, ability to communicate well, ability to get people to cast vision. We're really seeing this post-COVID times. So this is, and this has been unchanged in the last few years. Number 3 now this year is coaching. And why this is important is because in years past, this was no higher than 5. This year, it's jumped to number 3. So we're seeing coaching, and I'm a certified executive coach. Not everybody is going to be an executive coach, but increasingly so, leaders, good leaders, are expected to understand how to coach people, how to coach them specifically through challenges and issues, right? So, and I'm sure in your organizations, every good leader is expected to have some sort of coaching skill set or abilities, or at least have an understanding of what it is. Communicate clearly has been there. And now, for the first time in the top 5, before it was 7 and below, driving innovation. Why do we know this? Well, because the introduction of AI. Solving problems effectively have decreased down to 6. It's always been in the top 5 historically. So we're seeing a shift now, a clear shift. Driving change, innovation. So let me show you the full list. That was the top 6. This is the full list of 15. So this is all the kind of rankings of the total of the 15 competencies. So this was the global response. So I want to bring out some regional interesting points here. So in China, what we found is driving innovation and solving problems effectively are 1 and 2 respectively. So they are 5 and 6 globally. Driving innovation and solving problems is becoming 1 and 2 in China. And you can imagine why. China is a massive market. You need to get ahead. You need to drive, it's digital first in a lot of things. And just getting that exposure in China you need to be innovative, and you need to be very quick to go to market. One thing that's fascinating that we found from this report is that in China, the concept of coaching through people through challenges came dead last. And we thought maybe this was a translation issue, but I coached someone recently and I asked them specifically about this and said, yeah, we don't necessarily coach people. You get it right or you get it wrong, is what he said. I was like, wow. But if you can think about it, they're innovation, they're solving problems quickly. They don't necessarily have time to coach someone, and it's not seen as a skill set wanted. It's very fascinating talking to this person. He was just like, yeah, we don't really coach people. We just give them tasks. They get it right. They get it wrong. They get it wrong. We move on to the next person. I was like, wow. But it's the only country where coaching has come last. So anyway, but even within Asia, there's an interesting findings, because while in China, coaching comes dead last, in Thailand, coaching becomes the top aspect competency that's been requested from HR and L&D people. So even within Asia, we're seeing differences. And so that's why in Singapore, I'm not sure what it would be, but I feel like we would be kind of an in-between. But even our poll earlier shows that there are definitely some nuances when it comes to Singapore specific, especially since we have so many multinational companies in Singapore. All that to say is there are 15 competencies, and globally, though, engaging and developing talent is a top requested competency. How good are your leaders in your organization able to identify, develop talent? So this is just representative from the research from here. Now, let's look at L&D. So what was surprising about the L&D findings of this part of the research is that there was it was an unspoken expectation due to potential recession fears and what was going on with the Fed, is that there would be a drop in budgets for training, but actually we're seeing an actual overall increase. Not much, but at least there's an increase. So of course, there's a distribution of the responses. However, on the whole, there is a 8.3 increase in training overall, but then specifically for leadership, we're seeing a more increase for leadership specific training. Very interesting results because it was expected for there to be a decrease, but it seems like companies are still spending money, and especially spending money on leadership development. So let me ask you all here if you could just drop in the chat for you, what are your training topics going to be? Or if you can just go ahead and say what's kind of the hot training for you. Is it leadership? Is it sales? Is it change? Is it DEI? So just go ahead and just drop what are you all focusing on, just so we can see who's on the call in terms of what are we doing. So go ahead and drop it on the chat, or if you want to, you can unmute and just chat. But I'd love to know for here on the call, what are your companies focusing on in terms of training topics? So if you can go ahead and drop it in the chat, I would appreciate that. Or you can unmute and just tell me, I'd love to see what we are focusing on. So what is your company's training on? So for obviously we are a training company. So we train multiple things. What we are seeing on our training side, because a part of Momenta, we do a lot of training and developing team leaders in the sales, in the financial industry. So if you could just go ahead and drop in the chat what trainings you all are focusing on, what topics you're training on, whether it's leadership. Thanks, Eliza. It's communication, leadership, and yeah, thanks, Bez. Leadership and internal talent. See that? I mean, that's it. That's exactly what we're talking about, Bez, just now from all the respondents. Yep, developing your bench. Tech upskilling. Love that. Hard skills. Interesting. Specific training within our company. Leadership. Thanks, Tan. And Willie, coaching people on communication. So we receive a lot of requests for our coaching program. Thanks, Isaac. There's leadership. So there's a lot of relation to what we were discussing here. We do see a lot of requests for coaching, like basic coaching skills. How do we get our managers to do basic coaching stuff? So yes, we get a lot of that. Thank you for those who responded. So this is about modalities. This is where we're kind of going in terms of how training is being conducted. So of course, the very first one of these was done, the request would have gone out in end of 2019 before COVID hit. And so this is kind of the benchline, the benchmark. 70% of modality for training was in person. Then the following year after COVID really struck, virtual jumped up, right? So we're seeing virtual jumped ups up to close to 60%. That's in 2021. Then self-paced instructors, which was, you know, in the past, people would do virtual less than self-paced. Then all of a sudden, virtual during COVID jumped up, and self-paced, you know, it can increase, but not by a huge amount. And of course, due to COVID, in-person instructing went right down. Now in 2022, where COVID was kind of waning, then we're seeing a bit of a correction in terms of modalities. We're seeing then virtual is still up in 40s, and then in-person down to 20. So last year, we're seeing them all kind of come together at 30%. But for the first time since before COVID, as you can imagine, in-person has gone up. There has been an increase in self-paced instructing, people using an LMS or people using an online self-paced. But we find that even that, we're still seeing people want that kind of virtual engagement. Now in Singapore, we still see a lot of engagement in virtual because we have so many regional teams. And so we do a lot of virtual training still. But the important thing is to note that in-person training is back on the rise and has now outpaced virtual training. In-person, this is asked another way just to confirm the results. In-person requests for training has been growing. So now we're going to go into a very specific area of L&D, which is AI. This is a huge concept, and we wanted to capture how this is really being impacting the HR and L&D space. So this is some very interesting statistics that I want to share with everyone here. Of the 1,000 companies that responded, AI will impact HR and L&D work to a large or very large extent. So 27%. So basically they're saying, hey, AI is going to be huge. It's going to be big or very big for us. 27% saying that's big. So what that looks like, though, people aren't necessarily sure yet. So fascinating here is that 30% of respondents are using AI as a learning tool right now. So we're seeing 27% of the respondents saying, yep, it's going to be very important. And 30% of respondents saying, no, I'm using it right now. And of that 30% using it right now, 91% of them said that they're going to expand and increase. So there's 30% I'm using it right now. And of that 30, they say I'm going to use it even more. 22% saying it's going to be a huge thing. For those of you who are wondering, the first poll that you did in the beginning that was used to rank, ChatGPT was used to create those options. So did we use ChatGPT last year at this time? Absolutely not. So we are part of that 30%. And in our company, we use ChatGPT a lot now. So if you are not using it now or don't know how to, there's a bunch of different avenues of which you can use it for. So just to be clear of how it's being used, there's a number of things we'll go into in a moment, but 46% of those not using to. So of all the respondents, they said they're not using it now. About half of them said, I'm going to start. So there is a huge lean towards using AI in whatever capacity as a HR or L&D person. So what are we using it for? That's the big question. So here are the top use cases that's being developed currently. 2 avenues. 1, career development. And a lot of this is internal career progression within a large organization. Because frankly, not smaller organizations can't really afford yet to build an internal AI tool to help. But larger companies are definitely doing this. Career development. They input their skills, what they're doing in the particular company, in their particular role, and then this AI bot, this large language model can then start pathing a career path for them for advancement. And so there usually is, and they quoted this statistic where it's not uncommon to have maybe 5 HR people or 5 L&D people for like 50,000, staff. So there's no way you're having a one-on-one conversation with people about their careers. Or if you are, it's really going to be a quick cursory conversation. However, a chatbot can do all of that for every single person. So there's this career development aspect of, especially when it comes to internal advancement, they're seeing a lot of development for AI here. And then in the tech world, especially where it's easy to track and have kind of measurables and deliverables quantified, especially digitally, we're seeing AI being used for performance management. Now, of course, what we're seeing in both career development and for performance management, there are ethical considerations here. So it's not necessarily something that's easy to roll out, but those companies that are doing it, these are the 2 areas we're seeing a lot of AI being utilized: career development, especially internal advancement, and then performance management. Now, there is research out there, which I don't have in front of me, but it was quoted. I mean, it was discussed anecdotally that there is something to be said where people are more comfortable speaking to an AI chatbot about performance management than perhaps their human manager, especially if they know the conversation is not being recorded. So some interesting findings here, what people are comfortable with talking to chatbots and what they would rather speak to humans about. But the reality is there's not enough HR people to really cater to everyone's needs. So this is the 2 areas that we're really seeing HR being developed. Fascinating stuff. If I was working in a place like Google, would I want to talk to a chatbot about my development? I probably would. I probably want to know what opportunities. And then there was even a discussion I saw somewhere that you could go into an internal chatbot and then it would instantly bring up, if you want to develop in this certain area, because it's a global company, global tech company, the chatbot will instantly spit out all the opportunities that you can currently sign up for internally for your career progression. So it's a really cool thing for these large companies to be able to instantly link the desire of the staff member to current opportunities internally. So that's pretty cool. I don't want to be talking to a chatbot in terms of performance management, but for career development and looking for opportunities, maybe projects I can get on or internal initiatives, yeah, I would do that. So that wasn't part of the research. That was just me anecdotally engaging these 2 things. So it's just really interesting to see how you would use or how you are using AI in your professional roles. So the AI use cases, these are we gave them 6 kind of high level use cases for AI. And this is based on some of the anecdotal responses. And so of the responses from the HR and L&D professionals, the top 2, clearly, personalized learning. So this is really how do we really get a custom-made, individualized learning journey for a people or for a person, individual. Very fascinating way to use AI to ensure that they have a personalized learning experience. Now, what does that look like? We're not sure. Love this question here. Let me go to it in a second. Content creation. So, and this can be used in so many different ways. So we personally have used it, or at least I personally have used AI for things like translations into different languages. And then of course it has to be checked. It's not strong enough to just take it off and copy and paste it, but different modality translations. For example, and I have personally done this. How do you change a in-person training to ensure they have the same effectiveness for a virtual training or for a self-paced learning engagement? And so ChatGPT will actually spit out some lesson plans for you. And they may not be great, but they save you time in terms of creating something from scratch. And so if you're not using it as an L&D person, I find that it's an advantage for definitely for time saving. So this is a great question by Valencia. Let me read it out from the chat. To clarify, what type of tools do large organizations use to analyze people's data as there could be confidentiality concerns? Yes, so I know personally, I think this happens at Google when I talk to this person, where they sign off a lot of that confidentiality to Google, and you can imagine why, because they are big data. Now, what it's used for, and this is the ethical issue, what it's used for specifically, that's I don't know, and I wish I could speak to someone who is using this, but I personally think, wow, that's a really hard thing to do, to sign off all of the things that you are for regarding performance. So I don't know. I think we're still not there yet in terms of what is appropriate and what is ethical in the HR and L&D world. So we're seeing the beginnings of it, but they're very quickly, as you all are HR and L&D professionals, you very quickly run into key issues here. However, for L&D professionals, using something like ChatGPT to help you with translation, with content creation, that's really being the top way. I've even seen some people just, instead of going to Google, going to ChatGPT and saying, I need to develop managers, specifically looking for these key competencies over the next year. What do you suggest they do using current management tools or something like that? And it will spit out an amazing learning journey. So there's a number of things that AI can be used for, but we are still in the early stages of it. And definitely there's a lot of questions of how this can be really utilized at an organizational level. Right now, we're seeing a lot of chatbots being utilized, but how are the chatbots being educated on internal things? That's beyond my pay grade. So again, we're seeing the beginnings of this, and it's becoming increasingly important for the HR and L&D people to at least be knowledgeable about AI, because they are looking for ways to implement this into our organizations. So I'm going to finish here. Are there any other questions? I'd love to just transition into a bit of Q&A. So what stuck out to you? What questions? Thank you so much, Valencia, for that. I would love to be able to tell you exactly how they're doing it, but I don't have anyone that I could go on record to share with you about that. What stuck out to you, or if you have any questions about this? And we'll spend a few minutes here, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about what Blanchard Singapore is offering as a way of thanks for you all to be on this webinar. Or maybe what are you all experiencing in your organizations in terms of the HR trends? Love to see if there's any questions here. Yeah, we've used AI in a number of different ways, and then we even used it to write kind of lesson plans for engagements. And I haven't used it directly, but I've definitely used it as a beginning, and I've seen what ChatGPT can do in the kind of L&D space in terms of planning a workshop and stuff. It's very, very good. It's a bit depressing actually, um, how good it is, because it could take me days to come up with this great workshop, and it takes ChatGPT maybe like 10 seconds. But anyway, thanks, William. All right, let me, if you have questions, you can go ahead and unmute or you can drop in the chat. A few things I want to share with you about what Blanchard Singapore specifically is doing. We're talking about research from Blanchard Global, but this is Blanchard Singapore. So we have some workshops coming up that we would love to invite you to. And by coming to this, we will offer you a free seat. For this, so we have conversational capacity, which is our workshop for having kind of difficult conversations. And we introduce a framework and skills practice for navigating difficult conversations at work. That's coming up on May 10th. And then our flagship kind of people leadership workshop, 2-day workshop called the SL2 Experience. That's really learning how to lead situationally. We have a workshop coming up in April and again in July. So we would love to encourage you to come to those if you are looking for that. And for anyone who wants to try this out for your organization, we do have a free seat option for you with one purchase. So I have this question from Gloria very quickly. Do you foresee the survey results to continue into 2025? They will continue. There's no plan to stop. And we find that Blanchard has invested every year in this, and they only plan for it to be bigger and wider in scope. And I think we're going to, honestly, for me, we're only seeing the beginning of AI. And I think we're really starting to see, instead of aspirational or theoretical applications, in this next year, we're going to see actual companies applying it. So we're going to see actual use cases rather than just theoretical. And it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I personally, if you're asking me personally, I do not think AI is coming for our jobs as people trainers. Because I don't think people, although I have seen, I have literally seen a startup who is trying to replace kind of trainers. I saw a startup recently. Was a friend in Singapore. He has a company that's developing a program that uses AI to teach empathy. And so you speak into a camera, and the camera analyzes your facial expressions, and then it gives you real-time feedback. It's amazing, but it's still not there yet. But there's definitely companies that are gunning for what we do in terms of teaching people things. So I think we're going to be seeing, in just 12 months, we're going to see actual use cases happening. But yes, it's going to happen every year, and there's no plans for Blanchard. So every year we will be giving it. And at the end of this, if you stay till the end, we will be giving you the full report that's been issued by Blanchard Global. So we do a number of things that we can engage your training. Of course, with Blanchard, we are a people development company. We focus mainly on people leadership, but we've over the years developed things like self-leadership, which is for individual contributors. We definitely develop new managers, which is our Blanchard Management Essentials. And conversational capacity is what I discussed earlier, which is our kind of how to have difficult conversations. All of this is all about how to really help your people leaders maximize their leadership and to get the best out of their teams. And then another key one that we have, maybe two other key ones, is coaching. We teach basic coaching skills for managers, and we do have a DEI course to understand. DEI is more of an introduction foundational course called Courageous Inclusion. All of this can be found on our website, which is leadershiptraining.com.sg. And we would love to discuss with any of you any of your needs for your training. So what we are offering for anyone on this webinar is that you will have at least a 20% discount if we can confirm something before June. So you can get in touch with me. I want to say thank you. Again, my name is Derek. You can contact us through this, or you can reach out on LinkedIn, and want to say thank you. So if there are no further questions, want to say thank you for your time. I appreciate you giving us time, but hopefully this was really good insights. And for everyone who has stayed, and I'll take a picture and we have your contact information, you will be getting a copy and some materials from us today. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It was great to have you all. Hopefully this was informative, and I'd love to connect with you if you are willing. So thank you so much for your time, and we'd love to see you again soon. Thank you so much.